The ancient Aelids believed that Nirn was composed of 4 basic elements: earth, water, air, and light. And of these 4 elements, they believed the most sublime form of light was starlight. The stars are our links to the plane of Aetherius, the source of all magical power, and therefore, light from the stars is the most potent and exalted of all magical powers. Magica flows from Aetherius through all living things. This energy has been the subject of great speculation and study for many of the brightest minds on Nirn. Given its primordial origins, magic has become a force both feared and lusted after, capable of mythic feats. It was originally the elves who were mainly responsible for the study and practice of magic in Tamriel, but the Mages Guild was incredibly important for the spread of magical knowledge throughout. Welcome back to Fudge Muppet, my name is Scott, and today we're going to be looking into the influence of Vanus Galerion and his Mages Guild on magic and its perception in the Elder Scrolls. The practice of meddling with the forces of magic is not new, but due to differing beliefs and cultures in Tamriel, its study and use is viewed in a variety of ways. The Mages Guild was born from a desire to allow common folk to access the arcane, and its reach over Tamriel drastically changed the way mages were viewed. Since the early years of time, the elves were considered the most accomplished mages. They kept the knowledge they'd gathered to themselves for the most part, and many of the original mages chose to live in seclusion. This led to a somewhat mystic perception of those who controlled magic. It wasn't well understood by the public, and thus treated with both wonder and distrust. The few mages who banded together like the Sigic Order mandated strict control of who was able to practice and study magic from their sacred tower on Artaeum. They were a dominant force in the world around the start of the Second Era, regarded as reclusive mystics, wise and powerful. Their goal was to understand the cosmic forces of the universe in order to help guide Tamriel through the process of change, acting as caretakers of Nirn and its future. Highly selective of who was able to join, one of their members had many disagreements with the way the rest of the Sigics operated. His name was Vanus Galerion, and he very rightfully is an important character for the discussion of magical perception in Tamriel. Galerion was an Ultima born in the Somerset Isles to lowly serfs. Originally named Trectus, he learned to read with the help of his father, despite such learnings being outlawed by the lord of their estate. Over 8 years he learnt about the world around him, of creatures, history and magic, despite the control imposed on learning by those in power. Smugglers in the area provided him and his father with plenty of books to further learning, but the smugglers were captured and killed. For his part in the crime, Galerion's father was killed and left hanging for weeks as a warning against disobeying the cruel lord. In desperation, the young boy ran away from the estate, making it all the way to Alinor in poor shape. He was found by a travelling band of poets and minstrels and cared for in exchange for errands. One of the members had trained on Artaeum with the Sigics and saw untapped magical potential in Galerion, eventually taking him to the Magister of the Sigics, Icasus. He was then taken in by the Sigics and renamed Vanus Galerion as a symbol of his new life amongst the learned mages. The death of Galerion's father under the oppressive control of others would go on to fundamentally change the way magic was viewed and controlled in Tamriel. As he writes in Artaeum Lost, the moment he was accepted as a Sigic was a huge turning point for him. They told me that my old life was over. No more hiding tomes under floorboards for fear of being discovered. No more hay-raking and knee-bruising scullery work. I would live a sage's life, free to study as I please, so long as those studies advanced the cause of equity, peace, and wisdom. I felt such a great swell of joy in that moment. Of course, no joy lasts forever. During his study, he was regarded as a skilled mage, using his talents wisely and honorably. At the time, he and Manamako were considered the 2-star students of the Sigics, forming a rivalry that would exist for the length of both of their lives. Where Galerion was drawn to light, Manamako was drawn to the dark, after being tempted by necromancy. When the Sigics were unwilling to see the evil they were unleashing by simply banishing Manamako from their order, Galerion eventually made the decision to leave the mystic organization. For more on the story of Galerion, Manamako, and the spread of necromancy in Tamriel, check out our video linked in the description below. With a radical idea and a history of evidence backing up his goals, Galerion set about creating the Mages Guild. Archmage Sarlath recounts the initial process for the founding of the Mages Guild and fighting public opinion in his book Origins of the Mages Guild. When Vanus Galerion, a Sigil of Artaeum and student of the famed Arcesis, began collecting magic users from around Somerset Isle, he attracted the animosity of all. He was operating out of the urban centre of Firsthold, and there was a common and not entirely unfounded attitude that magical experiments should be conducted only in unpopulated areas. Even more shocking, Galerion proposed to make magical items, potions, and even spells available to any member of the general public who could afford to pay. No longer was magic to be limited either to the aristocracy or intelligentsia. He was ridiculed for his folly, but in less than a year he was able to bring his charter before Arcesis and Rillis XII, King of Firsthold, in the Charter Conclave to state his intent. The close of the meeting at the Conclave saw his charter approved, and the Mages Guild came to be widely regarded as a success. Some claim that Rillis's approval was politically motivated, but his sign of approval allowed the guild to be sanctioned under the Second Empire. Galerion quickly set about protecting what he'd built by creating a security force. Originally, they were simply hired thugs, but loyalty is always harder to come by than coin. The Order of the Lamp was formed, knights sworn to protect the Mages Guild all throughout Tamriel as their order spread from the Somerset Isles. As the order grew, it was obviously met with skepticism, especially in regions unfamiliar with magic. To this end, many rulers feared it and outlawed the guild, but as they were succeeded, the younger rulers welcomed the guild and gave them free rein in their territories. The benefits outweighed fear, and slowly but surely the people of Tamriel moved from fearing to tolerating or even actively praising the practices of magic. It operated with a strict hierarchy, but with the expansion came many new members and political ideals. Galerion eventually came to resent what he saw as the corruption of his intent. He'd wanted to create an environment where anyone who was able to pay could access teachings and magical products as they saw fit. Instead, the order had grown into an intricate morass of political infighting. While he kept his honorary title of Archmagister Emeritus and influenced many major decisions, Galerion eventually left the guild he created. Despite the political quagmire, the Mages Guild headquarters was established in the Arcane University of the Imperial City. This would go on to be the height of its power and influence, becoming the most notable center for research and practice of magic in Tamriel. Its location within the Imperial City meant that thousands more were exposed to the guild and its practices. This did wonders for the perception of the arcane arts, accepted in such a major way by the rule of the Second Empire. But with any peak, the fall is often not far away. During the Second Era, there was a brief time when the Mages Guild Charter was revoked, scarily enough replaced by the Fellowship of Anchorites. This was simply another name for Mannimarco's Order of the Black Worm, a necromantic cult that managed to sway Empress Clivia Tharn to give them control of the Arcane University. With the newfound reach of this cult, they sought to replace the Mages Guild's influence and gather up powerful artifacts from across Tamriel. When Molag Bal attempted to plane meld with assistance from the Order of the Black Worm and Mannimarco, the Mages Guild had founded a new headquarters in Ivea. The mages actively fought against the Daedric influence spread via Molag Bal's dark anchors, eventually forming part of the force that would venture into Cold Harbor to stop the evil plot. As a condition of this, the Worm Cult was ousted and the charter of the Mages Guild was reinstated in the Arcane University. After all this, Galerion would have a shot at ending the reign of his rival, who managed to cause so much damage to magic in Tamriel and the Mages Guild he once loved. Mannimarco had escaped the capture of Molag Bal, using the artifacts his order had gathered during their tenure in the Imperial City to empower his Lich form. Vanus Galerion returned to the order he'd left, rallying mages from across Tamriel and his Lamp Knights in a legendary clash to rid the world of dark influence. Both sides took heavy casualties and Mannimarco was believed to be slain, but Galerion would also lose his life from injuries sustained on the battlefield. It was poetic that he got to see his order flourish, but also fall into political and moral disrepair. The guild that changed the way magic was seen in Tamriel had passed its peak, the dark influences taking their toll. The Third Era saw the payoff of the previous instability, spelling the beginning of the end for the Mages Guild. Two major events loomed on the horizon that would spell doom for public perception of mages. The Mages Guild were deeply entwined with the Shadow Legion, battle mages of the Imperials bound to both the Arcane University and the Imperial Guard. Despite their strong connection to Imperial rule, a political shift led to a deep schism that split the Mages Guild. In a close election, Hannibal Traven was made Archmage. Archmage, a controversial choice. He'd previously headed the Anvil Mages Guild as a clean haul, coming down hard on anyone who even remotely disobeyed aspects of the guild charter. Quite quickly, he instituted serious reforms in the Mages Guild from his new position, drastically limiting those who could join and banning the practice of necromancy. While technically necromancy was banned since the early days of the guild, by the Third Era it was very rarely enforced, with many acts going on ignored. As a result, half the Council of Mages resigned, with some even fleeing for their lives due to their practices. The mass exodus weakened the power of the guild and called into question the validity of it as an institution. The fleeing of mages sympathetic to necromancy was taken advantage of by longtime adversary Mannimarco. Many flocked to his side, alienated by the sudden persecution from those in the Mages Guild. They carried out attacks on the guild, burning the Bruma Guild Hall and prompting action from Hannibal Traven to finally end Mannimarco and his worm cult. From the outside, this looked bad. Not only was the guild's strength weakening, but the newly elected Archmage was killed by the very necromancy he sought to destroy. This only helped foster the distrust of arcane practices, soon thoroughly feared through Daedric invasion. The Oblivion Crisis truly changed everything for magic users. The crisis was perceived by many of Tamriel's inhabitants to have been caused by the meddling with magical forces they could not fully comprehend. Magic wasn't stamped out by any means, but the orders who practiced it were largely distrusted. By the Fourth Era, the Mages Guild was completely dissolved, public sentiment stopping them from operating at the heights they once did. From the ashes of the guild's collapse, two other organizations rose in order to continue the study of magic. These two orders are quite separate but seek a similar goal: to be recognized by the Elder Council of Cyrodiil as the new dominant magic group in Tamriel. These two organizations were the Synod and the College of Whispers. While not outwardly in conflict with one another, the term Cold War seems fitting for their arrangement. Both these organizations were racing toward the same goal, but neither opting to make a drastic play for it, should they be demonized by the public for doing so. While very little is known about the Synod and the College of Whispers, both were said to have aided in the defense of the Imperial City from Umbriel. The major differences we do know is that the Synod have a more ordered organization, with a Grand Council leading their ranks. The Synod seem to be driven by quests to find powerful magical artifacts, enchanting a focusing crystal specifically for this purpose. In contrast, the College of Whispers seeks knowledge, going as far to summon Daedra to question them. Vanus Galerion and his Mages Guild were instrumental in demystifying the practice of magic throughout the provinces of Tamriel. His rough beginnings and exit from the Psijic Order demonstrated his dedication to the belief that such power should not be limited to those hand-selected, helping usher in some of the most arcane-friendly rule in the land. Powerful forces will always be misused and feared, despite the best wishes of an order. It's hard to fault people seeing the emergence of Daedra from Oblivion Gates and fearing that it was the repercussions of meddling with cosmic forces. Arguably, the Mages Guild stands out as a shining beacon for what the practice of magic could look like, creating an environment where anyone from the populace was able to access the means to learn and understand such a mythical force. And that is the legacy of the Mages Guild, an organization that sought to bring magic to the populace of Tamriel and out of the hands of the select few elves who once studied it. Through many years, the perception of magic shifted in the realm, but in the end, it was as feared as it was mysterious. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and do head down into the comments and let us know what lore topics you would love to see covered in the future. Subscribe for more awesome Elder Scrolls content. My name is Scott from Fudge Muppet, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.